Welcome back to Old School Sports and our OOTP 23 playthrough of the Pittsburgh Pirates. We are at the start of free agency, and as we talked about possibly doing at the end of our last episode, we have fired manager Fidel Almario before he actually ever managed a single game for us. He's a guy that we picked up to coach in the minors right when we started this playthrough about a year ago. We promoted him to bench coach for last season when we made some changes to the major league team. And then we had promoted him to manager a couple of weeks ago. But as we thought about it more and got to the start of free agency, Almario basically hates all pitchers. And if you remember our Kansas City Royals playthrough, we found ourselves in a similar situation with manager Mike Matheny, and just added another hardship in terms of being able to attract players to the team. It seemed like very few, if any, free agents were ever going to sign with us. And then there's also just the problem of the relationship between Almario and the pitchers, which wasn't going to be good for our team going forward. So we made the decision to move on. Some stuff like this does happen in sports. Football, you can think of Bill Belichick and Josh McDaniels. College football, George O'Leary, Greg Schiano, and even in baseball, guys like Wally Backman and Carlos Beltran for, personal and professional scandals and all sorts of other various reasons. Some of those people have been announced as head coaches or managers of teams and never actually coached a game. And Fidel Almario fits the same bill at this point. So we promoted recently hired bench coach John Vasquez to manager. You can see he's got good relationships with the Pirates overall and good relationships with some pitchers, no poor relationships, and only one relationship that's even fair. He's legendary with development, decent with mechanics, outstanding with handling aging. I think he will be a good addition to the team. We've got a pending offer out for a replacement bench coach at this point. Unfortunately, since we are now about 3 weeks away from the end of the regular season, the pool of coaches is not as good as it would have been a few weeks ago. So that's where we're going to take a little bit of a hit. Probably won't get as great a bench coach as we would hope. But we wanted to make sure we got the manager right, and I think we do have that right with Jean Vasquez at this point. So we've got some money to spend as free agency begins. You can see there's a fair number of solid pitchers out there. You get into the position players, it's a little bit slimmer picking, especially at the kind of level that we'd be able to play as the Pirates. A little intrigued by Khalil Watson as a one-year player. Second base and or third base and or honestly possibly shortstop, given that Tony Fonseca wants us to trade him, are areas where we're probably going to need to add some help this offseason. We, at the end of the last episode, made the trade with the Orioles for the third baseman, Kager, who hopefully can help us. Watson's 35 years old. He's wrecked physically. Those are the things that go against him, and those are significant things. He's also looking for about $10 million a year. But he's a respectable defensive player. Wish that his range was higher. I honestly see him as a little more of a third baseman than a second baseman with these ratings. He's got a little bit of speed, can run a little bit. We need to improve our team speed. And he can still hit a little bit. He's not what he once was, which one of us are, but still was kind of a league average player last year in terms of his OPS plus and WRC plus. He is also only looking for a one-year deal right now. I don't think he's a perfect answer, so I don't want to spend $10+ million on him right now. If he's someone who kind of lingers out on the list of available free agents for a couple of months and his demands come down and we're not able to kind of fill all the potential holes that we have in our infield through free agency or trades, he's someone who we could definitely think about re-engaging with down the line. Shortstop Tony Venegas, really like the glove on him. Personality not great. Doesn't hit for much power, has a little speed. He is durable. He's younger, looking for a little more money. Again, not a player that I'm going to chase. And I'm guessing at 29, he's probably looking for more than 1 year. Yeah, he's looking for a 4-year deal. I certainly don't want to be putting 10, 11, 12 million dollars a year into a player who is a little bit above replacement level, but certainly not a superstar. So if either of those guys linger into early next year and we haven't filled some of the holes, could potentially chase after one or both of them. Looking at the pitchers, and honestly, this is the guy that basically got us to fire our manager because it was impossible to sign him because he wasn't going to get along with him. But Bobby Gonzalez is a 28-year-old pitcher who's been a starter most of his career. I don't love him as a starter because the third pitch of the sinker and the fourth pitch of the slider, the sinker's not very good and the slider's brutal. But he's gotten by with an excellent changeup and an above-average curve and been a pretty successful pitcher over the course of his career with a 1.13 ERA plus, 88 FIP minus, has put up a 13.7 WAR for the Red Sox. Been an all-star a couple of times, led the league in wins in 2037 when the Red Sox won it all. For some reason, he's only looking for $1.7 million right now. I don't really understand it. And pitching isn't a huge need for us compared to corner outfielder and then the infield issues that I mentioned. But at $1.7 million, and I know some of you are sick of hearing this, but $1.7 million for a pretty good pitcher who's also extremely popular locally and very popular nationally seems like something we've got to try to do. So we're going to go and put an offer right out to Gonzalez to potentially join our team as either a lefty starter or a lefty arm out of the bullpen. And he's only looking for $1.7 million, as we talked about, and also only a 1-year deal. I'm going to see if we can maybe offer him, and I know this is rare for me to do, but a little more money than he's looking for, and see if we can lock him up for a couple more years through team options. I'm guessing this is going to be a guy who, as time goes on, is asking for more and more money and ends up getting a pretty big contract from somebody, but at this kind of level, definitely want to be involved, even as the Pirates. So we've got a very Pirates-type contract that we're going to offer to him. 3 years, average of $2 million a year, with team options for the second and third seasons in case something goes wrong. He's looking for $1.7 million over 3. We're giving him an average of $2 million a year over $1.7 million over 1 year is what he's looking for. We're giving him an average of $2 million a year over 3 years, but obviously a lot of optionality built in there for the Pirates. Doesn't want a long-term deal, so that's fine. We'll just go ahead and offer him the $2 million for 1 year. Still want to avoid promising a role to him if at all possible. And he's at least willing to think about $2 million for 1 year. So we will see what happens with Gonzalez. I tend to think there's going to end up being a bit of a bidding war for him, and he's probably going to get significantly more than the $1.7 million that he's supposedly looking for right now. But at that level, we're definitely going to try to be involved for a while. And we may have found a trade target for a cheaper but younger version of Khalil Watson. Pat Peaches is a 28-year-old. He's fragile physically rather than wrecked, so I guess that's something. His batting profile looks very average, but he has actually, in terms of his OPS plus and his WRC plus at least, been an above-average player over the course of his major league career. He's not great defensively. Would prefer him in more of a utility infielder role than an everyday starting second baseman or third baseman. But given that we've got so many holes to fill in the infield, I think this is a contract we can potentially take on. It's only 1 year left, and it's no, he's arbitration eligible next season. So probably a player that we wouldn't want on the team after this season. And I certainly would like to get the White Sox to keep some of that contract if at all possible. But if we can, say have the White Sox keeping close to half of his contract, we're going to be paying him $7 million-ish less than we'd have to pay for Khalil Watson. I think it's probably the way to go. I don't love the fact that he doesn't have any speed and he's a horrible base runner. But we're not going to fix all of our problems with one player. And I do think this at least gives us another professional bat in the infield. And as I said, with players like him, if we're able to bring Peaches on board and Kager, right now that's our starting second baseman and third baseman. If we could get into a position coming out of spring training where either Peaches or Kager is kind of a utility infielder for us, and then one of them starts alongside a better player at second or third, that would not be a horrible way for the infield to evolve over the next several months. We'll see whether we can make that happen or not. It's not like players who are really good second baseman and third baseman are just going to magically appear over the next 2 or 3, 4 months. We kind of know who's out there. We know how much they're going to cost through free agency or trade, but it's possible we'll get more desperate and be able to or willing to give up some of the top prospects in our system to bring on a really big-time infielder as we get closer to the start of next year. And we put a package together where the White Sox will actually keep 70% of Peach's contract, so we're only going to have to be paying him about $2.2 million next year. So I think that'll work out. We have to give up Luis Biedermeier. He's just not a big-time prospect. Also got a bad personality. Jorge Flores, you'll see a common theme here. Another guy with a bad personality we just want to get out of our system. Mel Thwan, not as bad a personality, but not really a prospect. Jackson Reynolds does have a good work ethic, good influence on people around him, but he's a 38-year-old that we had in high A ball last year just to have a veteran player with a good work ethic around, so I don't mind giving him up. And then Hugo Carrillo is a 24-year-old, decent personality with a good work ethic and loyalty, good influence on others, but although he had a solid year in single A this past year, not a big-time prospect. So in some ways I view it almost addition by subtraction, getting rid of some negative personalities out of our farm system. After hopefully a few years of running this team, we'll have very few of those negative influences left in our farm system. Right now, I just haven't taken the time to go through team by team and player by player throughout the farm system to weed all of them out. But certainly when we can get a few of them out at a time who are not necessarily the greatest influences on the development of those around them, and we can also get a player who should play a important role for us next season for those kind of guys, definitely a deal that we're going to make. So we are going to clear out some non-prospects from the minor league system and bring on Pat Peaches to potentially be our second baseman, or at the very least a utility infielder for us next season. And we have now got our bench coach signed, Mario Lisson. Really good with development mechanics and aging, and also good at teaching some of the aspects that we need to teach. Unfortunately, teaching running is where we were kind of weakest, and we're still relatively weak there with a bunch of guys who are only decent at it. But he's a guy that we expect to have good relationships with the team. And he also, with his personality, is going to fit in reasonably well with the rest of the team. So we've got happy staff cohesion at this time. Was hoping to bring on a bench coach that could help us in terms of coaching running, and it didn't turn out that way because all three of our coaches, whether the bench or the first and third base coach, are only decent with teaching running. But you can see that in terms of teaching defense at the catcher, infield, and outfield levels, we're pretty good with our coaching staff at this point. And Jan Vasquez, I promise, is going to actually get a chance to manage a game for us. And taking a look at our finances, bringing Peaches on board since we had Chicago retain a lot of his contract for this next year still gives us a lot of money for free agents. But given that he is expected to have about a $9 million number in arbitration next year, our money for extensions is a lot less. We're unlikely to extend him and offer an arbitration. We'll probably look to trade him either near the trade deadline this upcoming season if things don't go well for the Pirates, or hopefully more likely after this season, but before arbitration if we can get anything for him. But certainly this will encourage us to not make any long-term deals with players since we just don't have a lot of money available for longer than 1-year contracts. And given that it's not an incredible free agent class, there is potential that we will end up bumping up our scouting, development budgets, and or even the amount of money we're kind of setting aside for the draft, particularly once we know where we're actually going to be picking in the draft. So I anticipate that our payroll is going to be the lowest in the game. Should be higher than it was last season when all is said and done. But we're not just going to spend it to bring bodies on if we don't think they're the right players to bring on. We've got enough good prospects in our system, and we're going to need to kind of continue finding and developing prospects to have any chance of making this playthrough successful with the Pirates, that if we end up just putting more money into scouting and development now, I don't think that's going to be the worst thing in the world if that's one of the results of this offseason. And some good news, Bobby Gonzalez favors our offer right now. I think that could very well change, but would certainly love to get him signed for next year. And let's see how we did in the lottery for the 2039 amateur draft. We're picking 4th, and we were supposed to be 5th. So that's a little bit of progress. Feel bad for the White Sox, who were supposed to be picking 1st and are now 6th. So not going to be picking at the absolute top of the draft as we did this season, but would certainly hope that with the 4th pick in the draft, there's going to be a pretty attractive player on the board for us to pick next July. And our Rule 5 draft pick from Kansas City, Willie Arenales, is going to go to India to see the famous guru, Vishnu Hit Me Hard. We will see what happens with Mr. Arenales. I guess the only positive thing is, although we kept him on the team all year because we wanted to invest in him and potentially have him as part of our team going forward. He put up a 5.15 ERA, and he certainly doesn't necessarily have a profile that he's going to be a great reliever, but would certainly prefer not to lose him to finding spiritual enlightenment. But we'll find out what happens with his vision quest in the coming weeks and months. And some good news and some bad news. We did get Bobby Gonzalez signed. Fans are excited by it. Take a look at what happened with fan interest and got a nice 5-point bump. So he is a good addition to the team. Willie Arenales looking confused. So he's going to reorder his priorities. We'll see what happens with Arenales. Could leave us with another hole in the bullpen. All the more reason to be pleased that we brought on Bobby Gonzalez, because he is also a left-handed pitcher. I still don't really understand exactly why Gonzalez needed to sign a one-year deal at such a low dollar amount. I mean, he's coming off of a bad year in Boston, 8-13 with a 5.25 ERA, but he's still a 28-year-old pitcher that has proven to be a pretty good major leaguer, unless everyone else just has scouts who think he's totally done. I think it'll be a nice signing for us for 1 year. So it's good to have Gonzalez on board, but honestly, I feel like we are still a little light in terms of left-handed arms out of the bullpen. You can see between Estrada and Gonzalez and Omar Ganoa, who could also end up starting for us, we've got 2 to 3 left-handed arms that could be potentially starters. But Arenales is really our only pure left-handed bat out, or left-handed arm out of the bullpen. And with the confusion that he's currently experiencing, I could definitely see us needing to get another left-handed arm for the bullpen. So I think that's what we might go see, if there's anything on the free agent market that's interesting. Still have money to spend, obviously. If there's not anything on the free agent market, then we can certainly look at making a trade for a lefty, but would prefer if we can find someone who's got a reasonable price to not give up any assets out of the organization to bring someone on board. And the 25-year-old lefty Juan Munoz is intriguing. Issue is he's never pitched above high A ball. Does have a very nice personality. He's a ground ball pitcher who throws in the mid to high 90s, so his stuff is really good. You look particularly against lefties, and you would think that he could be pretty effective as a left-handed specialist, but he's looking for $2.8 million as a guy who's never played above high A ball. I'll offer him a minor league contract. I'm sure he's not going to like that, but not willing to offer him almost $3 million a year, given that he hasn't proven anything at all at the major league level. And I don't know if we want to sign 39-year-old Braylon Gonzalez. He's wrecked physically, and he's also coming off of an injury, a torn rotator cuff that kept him out basically all of last year. You can see we've got low scouting accuracy on him. I'm going to request a scouting report on him, see how bad he looks. If he kind of looks like this profile, when our scouting report comes back and we've got a high accuracy on him, he might be worth a flyer on as a left-handed arm out of the bullpen for one season. But certainly, if it looks like he's regressing, not the type of player that I want to chase after. And as we get ready for the Rule 5 draft, taking a look through the system, just making sure that we don't lose anybody. Clearly, we're going to put Isaiah Hill on the 40-man roster, number 6 prospect in baseball. Didn't hit great when he was up in AAA last year, but did an awesome job at high A and double A ball. And although he hit only 208 in AAA, all things combined, he still did hit 40 home runs last year. Actually, correct that. If I could do math, he hit 50 home runs last year across those 3 levels. So he's not fully developed, but he is certainly a player who is in the mix to make the Pirates coming out of spring training next year as a left fielder or a right fielder for us. Obviously would prefer to be playing him in left, but Mendez, the Rule 5 acquisition, is kind of the other guy who's plugged in as a corner outfielder for us, and he's got a bit better arm for right, but his range is just brutal. Really would prefer that Mendez be a designated hitter for us rather than playing first base or the outfield. So we will cross those bridges when we need to, but clearly we are going to put Isaiah Hill on the 40-man roster to eliminate any chance of losing him in the Rule 5 draft, and probably a few other players who will be adding to the 40-man also, which will dig into the amount of money we have for free agents a little bit, since we'll be putting those guys on major league minimum contracts, but clearly don't want to be losing any talent in the Rule 5 draft, and hopefully there will be some interesting players out there in the next few days. I think the Rule 5 draft is 3 days from now on the 23rd. That I don't know if we're going to take 5 people in the Rule 5 draft and end up keeping 4 of them on the major league roster all season like we did last year. But I would think that there's definitely going to be players on that in the Rule 5 draft who can help us. So we're going to start getting prepared for that. And as it turned out, Hill was the only player that we felt we needed to add to the 40-man roster. There's some players who theoretically we could lose, but not going to be all that brokenhearted if we do. So we're about to kick off the Rule 5 draft. It's going to have the 5th pick. I'd say what we're looking for is left-handed pitcher or any decent pitcher, a second baseman, third baseman, shortstop, and maybe a corner outfielder. So we're basically looking for just about everything. Obviously, if there was a good catcher, we'd take him too. We're just looking to bring some talent or some players with potential talent onto the team. So we'll see how the Rule 5 draft goes. Scouting director recommends that we pick Sergio Uribe, a 28-year-old left fielder. Not a bad bat. And he's decent defensively. He's making $3.7 million, but we've got room to take that on. What has he done over the course of his major league? He's been an above-average hitter over the course of his major league career. 279 hitter with a little bit of pop. He's also got a little bit of speed. Not a great base runner. But he would definitely be in the mix to make our roster. There's no doubt about that. So he's an interesting guy. We'll take a look through everybody else out there and see if there's somebody we like better. But I can't say that Mr. Cavanario's recommendation of Uribe seems to be a bad one. It seems to be a pretty decent recommendation. And I've looked around, and I think we're going to go with Sergio Uribe. There's also a couple of middle infielders. If one of them falls to us in the second round, we may take a flyer on them. They're more decent field, no-hit kind of guys. But Uribe's bat is not bad. I mean, you can see he was an all-star in 2034, and he also won a Silver Slugger when he was a center fielder. I don't know whether he starts for us as a corner outfielder, but I think he's certainly a bat that could help us. And at $3.7 million for next year, we've got the money to fit him on our team. You know, whether we would want to pay him over $5 million in arbitration next season is a huge question, and we'll cross that bridge when we come to it, similar to with Peaches. But I think he's a player who could help us next year. So we are going to go ahead and follow our scouts' advice and bring on Sergio Uribe in the Rule 5 draft. Here in the second round, scouting director recommends 25-year-old starting pitcher Roger Smallwood. Not that exciting to me. Not a great influence in the clubhouse. He's never actually pitched in the majors, and profiles is a very average-ish, if that, major league starter. We've got a lot of decent starters on the team right now, so not going to chase him. A few of the middle infielders that we were interested in are still out there, so I'm going to give some thought to whether we want to bring perhaps a shortstop into camp also, to give us a little insurance if we do have to move on from Tony Fonseca at some point, or if we have some injuries during spring training. And I think we are going to bring shortstop Danny Cantu into camp. Split last year between AA and AAA in the Red Sox organization. Hit okay in AA, didn't do much in AAA, and certainly doesn't really look like a major league hitter. But he's versatile defensively and certainly respectable defensively. If we had a bunch of injuries and you kind of have to break camp with him as a backup utility infielder at second and shortstop, it's not the worst thing in the world, given his glove. I tend to think he probably won't make the 26-man roster, but we're going to go ahead and draft Cantu and at least give him a chance in camp to maybe prove us wrong. And the scouting director is still recommending Roger Smallwood in the third round. We really don't want to touch him. Honestly, the pitchers this year available were not really all that exciting to us. The highest potential player is Jose Araguin. Never pitched above high A ball. With the potential for below average movement and average at best control. Also being an extreme fly ball pitcher, just think he's going to have probably a problem with home runs at the major league level. I just don't see any point. Well, I guess there's always a point in bringing him into camp and seeing what he can do. But I just don't think there's a lot there with him as far as his potential. And then some of the more accomplished players like Reggie Crawford, bad personality, not that good a pitcher, wrecked physically. Jesus Irvin, decent personality, but fragile, not really that good a pitcher. And Luis Danis Morales, wrecked physically, not really that good a pitcher. There's just not a lot out there this year, so I think we're just going to go with the shortstop Cantu and the corner outfielder Uribe in the first 2 rounds of the Rule 5 draft and move on from there. And we have gotten our scouting report back on Braylon Gonzalez, and perhaps not surprisingly, after the injuries that he's been through, definitely looks like he is moving in the wrong direction, so not a player at his age that we're going to be signing to a free agent contract. As we get near the end of December here, we've bumped fan interest up a little bit with some of our trades and signings. We've filled some holes on the margins with the likes of Kager and Peaches at third base and second base respectively, and then bringing on Cantu and Uribe through the Rule 5 draft, and then signing Gonzalez as a free agent. I think we've made some progress. Probably haven't made as much as I would have liked, but there's just not a lot of great options out there in the free agent market, and I'm not inclined to waste the money. So for the near term at least, I'm actually going to bump scouting and development both up a little bit more, just to make sure that I don't forget about it when we get into spring training or we get past spring training, and also going to even bump up the draft budget a little bit just to give ourselves a little more flexibility there potentially with who we can pick up. Obviously, if we get to a point over the next couple of months where we need to sign a big-time free agent or take on some salary, we can adjust those down. But sometimes I get caught up in just kind of recording the episode and simming ahead quickly and not really thinking about everything holistically. And I just want to make sure that if we don't end up spending all of that money on free agents, that we have at least made an effort to continue to invest in our minor league system. And Juan Munoz told us he wasn't going to sign anything less than a major league contract, and he Did end up getting a contract with the Marlins, 1.8 million, so a lot less than he was looking for. But I think that's a bit of a bold move for a player who hasn't played above high A ball. It does say he has 1 year of major league service. Yeah, I've seen that being a bug in the game. Or maybe it's not a bug in the game. The only thing I can think looking at him is that maybe he was a Rule 5 pick during the 2037 season and spent the whole year on the injured list and then got a year of major league service for that reason. Little mystery here. Yeah, that's exactly what it was. He was picked in the Rule 5 draft. Oh, he was picked by us. Oh, who used to be us, the Kansas City Royals, in the Rule 5 draft. And then he was injured the entire season with a ruptured UCL. Okay. Okay. So I was actually responsible for that. I was the one who put him on the IL for the entire year. So that makes sense. Kansas City had picked him in the Rule 5 draft because he's a lefty. Yeah, we had picked him in the Rule 5 draft. Thought we would take a flyer on him. And then he ended up getting hurt in spring training, which meant that we put him on the IL all year. He got that year of major league service, and then he ended up back in high A ball. But it looks like maybe after I left the Royals, they just sent him back to the Marlins because he's not part of the Kansas City organization. Anyway, apologies for that diversion. So the calendar's now turned to 2039, still a couple months away from the start of spring training. Bobby Gonzalez, happy to bring him on board as a either arm out of the bullpen or a potential starter for us. Looking at the batters that are out there, still some great players available. Manny Vela, obviously we can't afford him, but would certainly love to bring a player like that into the organization. Khalil Watson's still out there looking for $2 million or $10 million a year. Do we take a flyer on him at some point to play third, maybe second for us? But would probably be inclined to try to turn him into a third baseman if we brought him on board. He's still definitely in the mix. He's not a great player, but as a third baseman, he's pretty solid defensively. Gets a little speed onto our roster and only have to make a 1 year commitment to him, and we do have money to spend. So I'd say he's still in the mix. Pitcher-wise, there's still a lot of decent-ish pitchers out there and available. Most of them are looking for a fair amount of money. And I think, here on January 3rd, it's probably a little early for the trading blocks to be incredibly populated, but there's a few pitchers out there on the trade block at this point. That's another avenue that we can look into. And then looking at the batters, there is a shortstop out there, Noelve Marte. Really nice defensively. Not the worst hitter in the world. He's making $34.5 million a year. Yeah, if the Mariners wanted to trade him to us and retain the vast majority of his contract, that might be something to look into. So second baseman Albert Dominguez is out there. Really nice glove, really nice personality, not much of a hitter. Wrecked physically. So there are guys for us to potentially explore bringing on who could help us in the infield for a season. I'm guessing Marte, the demand is going to really be crazy. Ooh, it doesn't want to go to Pittsburgh. Not an issue. Should be getting used to that right now, but I just am not. Bonacci, don't love the poor range. Albert Dominguez, making a lot of money. And they're looking for the third baseman. We just picked up Kager, or Bobby Gonzalez, good starting pitcher. So we could probably put together a deal without those two to potentially bring him on. Jose Rivera doesn't look like he's got the best personality in the world, but very good defensively. Strikes out a ton, doesn't have great power. He's fragile. I would think that he would have to be pretty cheap, even though he's good defensively. And we have no player who makes the deal work, but that could be just because we don't have enough money to bring him on. If we knock that salary to 30%, yeah, there's a lot of options if we wanted to go down the line of bringing him on. So that's, and the glove is great. The bat is not horrible. The fragility isn't great. The personality isn't great. But, we could trade away Tony Cook, who's a much better personality, much better durability, but nowhere near as good defensively, and similarly, mediocre-ish hitter who doesn't have the same kind of speed that Rivera does. So there are options out there on the trade market and in the free agent market for us to continue thinking about as we get closer to the start of the 2039 season. We've still got money available, and we've still got prospects available if we want to try to make a few more changes and try to get this Pirates team in a position where we can be playing close to 500 ball next season. That's definitely the goal of our ownership. And coming off a 72-win season, that's definitely our goal as well. So we will find out the final moves that we make in pursuit of that goal as we prepare for the 2039 season in our next episode. Until then, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.